To understand the miracle of Curaçao, we must first go back to a time when this small island in the Caribbean was just featured on the FIFA football map. For decades, Curaçao was simply a place of paradisiacal beaches where baseball reigned above any other sport. Football was a secondary activity, a Curaçao national team that was often thrashed and underestimated by its CONCACAF fans. But below the surface, there was a latent seed. After the dissolution of the Dutch Antilles in 2010, Curaçao was reborn as an independent football nation, but the path was dark. The team was stagnant due to being below 150 in the world rankings, lacking professional infrastructure, and its best talents emigrating to the Low Countries since they were children, never to look back. It was a ghost team, a team that played in empty stadiums, dreaming of something that seemed impossible, a place at the table of the giants. Nadi, absolutely not from the island, could imagine that these young people who grew up in the camps of Amsterdam and Rotterdam would end up returning to their roots to change the history of Caribbean football forever. The beginning was slow, painful and full of doubts, but the identity was on the verge of becoming his most lethal weapon. Everything changed with a strategic movement that seemed crazy, the total professionalization of talent capture in the diaspora. The key moment, the incident that ignited the fire, was not a party, but a series of telephone calls led by figures such as Patrick Kluivert and later Guus Hiddink. These football men convinced players from the Premier League and the Eredivisie that they were not simple reserves in the selection of the Low Countries, but national heroes in the land of their fathers. The central event that marked the point of return occurred in the definitive qualifiers. Imagine the scene: a small but vibrant stadium, the Caribbean humidity weighing down in the air, and a team from Curaçao that for the first time played like a Swiss watch with an Antillean soul. The cinematic moment arrived in November 2025 against Jamaica. It wasn't just a goal. It was a 90-minute tactical resistance in which a country of 50,000 inhabitants silenced a regional power. When the final silence sounded, Curaçao on the ground had tied the party. They had their passports sealed for the 2026 World Cup. The image of the players crying over the chessbed, hugging a flag that many critics said they didn't feel, became the symbol of a new era. The Anonymous from the Caribbean had just bought his ticket for the biggest fiesta on the planet. What the majority of the world ignores is the terrifying statistic behind this success. Curaçao was not classified by pure success or by the increase of cups to 48 selections. Classified because he became the most efficient team in the zone in defensive transitions. While CONCACAF's potential was lost in the chaos, Curaçao implemented a pure, hot school gaming system. A curiosity that few people notice is that he is aware of his sips on the way to the World Cup, coming from matches started by the Bacuna brothers, a blood connection that worked like the engine of a Ferrari in the body of a tractor. Furthermore, Curaçao became the nation with the fewest inhabitants in its history and achieved a World Cup, surpassing Iceland's achievement. But here is the key data. Your Porter, Eloy Room, recorded the highest number of stops per minute played throughout the group stage of the knockout round. The revolution was not just talent, it was a rebellion of data. The island's team demonstrated that, with European analysis technology applied to the Caribbean heartland, it was possible to manufacture a giant in a probe measuring 444 square kilometers. They were not solo once players. It was an imported and perfected tactical system under the Caribbean sun. Curaçao's impact on world football is profound and challenging. For many, this is the perfect example of how modern football has torn down the traditional borders of nationality. Curaçao has created a manual for all small nations, the diaspora model. This legacy forces FIFA and analysts to replant what really means a national team under the same name. Is this a stain on history for purists who criticize the use of players born in Europe? Is this a blessing that democratizes sport? The image of Curaçao at the 2026 World Cup is a message of hope for nations like Suriname, Guyana, and even African countries that previously felt forgotten. Curaçao has demonstrated that the size of the population does not dictate the size of the population. His presence in the stadiums of Mexico, the United States, and Canada will be a constant reminder that football is a universal language that can be spoken with a Dutch accent but felt with the heart, before Elano. The legacy is undeniable. Curaçao is not just a cruiser parade. Now, there is a wealth of respected football players who have put themselves at the forefront of world football. At the end of the day, The story of Curaçao in the World Cup is not about tactics, passports, or balloon-posing statistics. It's about that feeling that we've all had at one time or another. That of being the least favored, the one that doesn't believe they can win, the small one facing the giant. When you see those once warriors in blue take to the field against powerful Germany, you remember that behind them there is a small island with a huge heart and thousands of people who waited decades to see their name on the global marker. This is the magic of the World Cup. This is the only place where David really has a Honda and a stone to take down the Goliath. In pure World Cup, we believe that these are the stories that make this sport worth loving. We want to ask you, who have followed this path with us? Do you ever remember in your life when everyone told you that you couldn't and achieved what was impossible? What other small selection do you think will be the next one to pull off the coup? Tell us your most inspiring football memory in the comments. Subscribe to Live every second of the Curaçao saga in 2026, because on this channel, football is lived with the passion of those who know that the events, no matter how small they seem, can always come true.